everyone, welcome back to my channel. And today I have a very special guest I'm super excited to introduce. He is a UFO experiencer. He has his own YouTube channel called Order of Light. We are the Disclosure. His name is Robert Earl White. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Megan. Thank you so much for having me out. Nice to be with you. And yeah, quite a story for you tonight.
Yeah, so I wanted to have more people like you on my channel who are also experiencers. And, you and I have become kind of like personal friends, sharing our own experiences. And so my goal with doing this whole show is basically to encourage other people to share what memories they have and help them recover their memories, because it can be kind of murky out there. Not a lot of people talk about this stuff, especially, maybe people more our age. So we kind of want to, I think you and I both agree, we kind of want to like normalize it a little bit.
Absolutely. For me, it started a long time ago in 1991, April 21st, around 10:18. I had a UFO crash behind my house. It was covered up by the Air Force, Men in Black, and the Coast Guard. Happened not far from a nuclear plant here in southern New Jersey. The town's called Lower Alloways Creek. The UFO case is known as the Lower Alloways Creek incident. And during this situation, I was only 4 years old. My mother was a single mother, 22 years old. She had friends there. They witnessed this. My aunt next door, same situation. A bunch of other phone calls were made to the police station. The story's well documented. It was on the Philadelphia News newspapers. The show Sightings, Unsolved Mystery all came out. And it was a big cover up, and it was very, very eventful. And it's something that really stuck to my mother, to me, and our family, although we never had evidence. Unfortunately, as I said, the Men in Black were involved. They came to our house. They threatened my mother, but before doing so, the gentleman that was in the Air Force did this regression therapy, maybe 5 minutes long, with my mother. And up till that point, my mother was completely unaware of the extraterrestrial phenomena, UFOs. Everyone out there, keep in mind, it's 1991, long before the Men in Black movie was out. All right. And, they did this brief regression. It was at that moment that my mother realized that she has been in contact with these beings and was currently at that time in contact with them. And this continued to go on and on and on. My mother asked the Men in Black 3 simple questions. They answered her questions, which were quite compelling. Then they threatened my mother to say that it was a helicopter, because they told her that the following day, all the media agencies would come out, UFO investigators, news stations, which my family remained anonymous. So that tells everyone out there, that's exactly who told all these groups to begin with. The Men in Black and these agencies, they're the ones contacting UFO shows and agencies. They're playing the whole game. So with that being said, my mother played the script. She did what she was told, because the Men in Black threatened to take me away if she didn't report it as a helicopter. And for everyone that's watching, what happened, to go over the story briefly of just the crash. So it was April 21st, 10:18 p.m., 1991. It was raining. Cloud coverage was around 1,100 feet, so 1,000 feet or so. And my aunt that lived directly next door, she went to her bedroom window, and her bedroom was up at the top. And she went out and she went into her bathroom, which was directly right there as well. And as she was about to use the bathroom, she looked out her bathroom window and she saw this elongated triangular object, a little larger than a helicopter, a military helicopter. But it was triangular, completely silent, just hovering there, had 3 blue lights on it and a very weird white light in the center of it, completely silent. maybe a telephone pole above the tree line. It was very low. And she's watching it for a little bit and she says, "Oh my God, I got to call Beth Ann. I live directly next door out in the middle of the country. You know, right behind our house, there was a tree line. And over that tree line, there was a creek, the Lower Aloes Creek, which is directly connected to the nuclear plant. It's the main creek that the nuclear plant hooks up to.
Okay.
And that's where this craft was hovering, was over this bridge. And my aunt's watching it and it's completely silent, very large, very low, just hovering there, not moving at all. She goes to her bedroom, picks up her phone, calls my mother next door, who was watching the baseball game with two of her girlfriends. I was upstairs. My bed was up against the back window. And my mom heard the phone ring. She goes to the back of the kitchen facing towards the same direction. We had windows. She picks up the phone and my aunt says, Beth Ann, look outside. There's something in the backyard. And my mom's looking. She goes, "Oh my God, what is that? What is that?" Her two girlfriends heard the commotion and they came running over screaming, "What?" And I heard all the commotion. And being so curious, hearing everyone running towards the back of the house, I stood up on my bed and I peeked out the window. And as they were all watching this on the phone with my aunt, all of a sudden, red and orange sparks start shooting out of this thing, followed by this white flash of light. I don't know if it was another UFO. I don't know if it was a weapon from a UFO, but very much like the light ships we see flying around in the sky.
Yeah,
Imagine something like that, like all happening all at once. It came down and this craft exploded, but the outside of the craft exploded like a normal explosion, to the point my family thought the debris was going to hit our house. But
right.
the center of it enveloped itself in this light, and it just sucked itself into itself. And all of this happening all simultaneously, the craft just went directly down, what was left of it. And it all happened as like one big explosion. The insides sucked itself into itself. The outskirts exploded like a 150 yard to 300-yard
Wow.
trajectory of debris. And instantly, my mother, terrified, they were all terrified. She instantly hung up the phone and called 911. And
Yeah.
what happened after that is known as the Lower Aloes Creek incident. For everyone that's watching, I have a 3-part documentary on my YouTube. If you go to my main page and scroll down, you'll see it in a playlist, my UFO crash story, the Lower Aloes Creek incident. It's going over the mutual UFO networks, a lot of additional evidence, firefighters' statements, military phone conversations, other witnesses. And this situation was really covered up. And it was a lot because my mom at that time realized her connection with all of these beings. And in the following weeks, the Mutual UFO Network came out and they did a bunch of regression hypnosis therapy on her. And the stuff my mom was saying, for being 22 years old, no college education, high school diploma, out in the middle of the country bumpkin folk. And she was just, she was describing like just things about genetics that are just, I still don't even understand them,
Yeah.
So this went on for a while, but my mom always kept a tight lid on it. When the show Sightings, Unsolved Mystery, they came out and they did a regression therapy. The episode never aired due to the Men in Black shutting everything down.
That's
but when they
too.
But when they were doing it, she had to sign a bunch of release forms, paperwork. And it was they were going to use like Mrs. W, like in the articles, that's what they call her. So it's a Mrs. W, Mrs. White, Beth Ann White. So, they were doing that and they were going to blur her face and just, have her under these regressions, but that never aired. And my mom was, really concerned about my well-being, and she knew the ridicule and all that would come along with it. especially because some of the things that was being revealed with my mom and her abductions and being in contact with all sorts of different beings. She didn't want me to grow up as that kid getting made fun of, oh, your mom's getting abducted by aliens and all of that. So she was really worried also because the men in black threatened her, like, hey, we're going to take your son away if you don't play our narrative. You're
Right.
going to say it was a helicopter. And I must also add this: all military bases were called, all local airports to FFA. All right. No helicopters were reported missing or even flying near there. This is a nuclear plant zone, no fly zone.
Yeah.
Nothing should have been there. And I'll go ahead.
I was gonna ask, so the UFO, it was triangle shape, right? So you never saw any, did you get to see any beings that came out of it, or no? It just it
No,
basically blew up, and it wasn't like thundering or anything like that, right? It just, or lightning, it just like there was like a beam that came into it and then it just disintegrated kind of.
yeah, the night of the crash, it was a light rain, very light rain, but cloud coverage. And
Yeah.
it happens so quick. And the only way I can describe it is like a beam or a ball. When a ball of light is moving that fast, the trail, it's hard to tell if it was like a beam
Yeah.
or a separate thing just moving really, really fast.
Yeah.
And that's when the explosion happened, the way you would imagine a normal explosion of some sort of aircraft. But the center of it, the little quick, how it just collapses in on itself, like
Yeah.
it's wild. And during that whole process, it boom, straight down.
It almost feels like, because I wonder like who took it out, because it almost feels like something else took it out. And I wonder how quick did it take the men in black to get to your house after it like exploded?
Yes, so this all goes, and I didn't want to get too much into
Oh,
detail,
sorry.
but after, no, it's okay. I was trying to save time. But after my mom made the 911 call, 10 minutes later, the police came, took initial report: what, where, when. Went to my aunt's house, same thing, and they wanted to get over to the scene. 25 minutes later, two blacked out cars, roll up, town cars, roll up. Out of the one car, two gentlemen wearing black suits and black hats, no glasses. It was nighttime and it was raining. And out of the other car was a gentleman in clear as day Air Force attire. Clearly Air Force. They both look completely human, and they come up. My family obviously thought it was the government because something just crashed behind our house.
Yeah.
That's all we were thinking at that moment, even though we didn't know what could be that large and just hover without having blaze or anything that would have produced sound. It was completely silent. So that was 25 minutes afterwards. And here's something crazier, okay? We lived out in the middle of nowhere. So it took us 20 minutes just to get to our family in the next town over.
Right.
And something else to point out, that craft was hovering there when my aunt saw it. The whole situation took over like 5 minutes, right around 5 minutes from my aunt seeing it to it crashing and my mom calling 911, about 5 minutes. But there's no telling how long that was there. And in the articles I discovered after 30 years, you know, in the articles, my mom was talking about a dream she had the night before.
Mm.
And it's very, 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 extraterrestrial ish. But, these were the screened memories as they referred to them. Richard Butler, Bud Hopkins, these people were working on the case. So, they were referring to it as that. My mom's seen mongooses and hamster cages and a
Yeah.
whole bunch of other wild things. Red and orange bread ties going up the cages, DNA strands, the T
Right.
strand and C strand of DNA. So, and that was her screen memory. After she had these regressions, she found out what all of that was symbolizing. The mongooses were gray extraterrestrials. The two large snakes she saw were reptilians.
Yeah.
The hamster cages, they were tubes where they grow stuff. And I guess she was seeing them, expanding DNA strands and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Wild. And after this, and after her doing her regressions and going through the night of the crash, there was a definite connection to what beings were doing what. And my mom talked about a lot of different beings. The ones that we believe are associated to the craft that crashed, because why was this thing behind our house to begin with?
Right.
Why? Nothing else around. So this thing was there, and the beings my mom called, and I'll back it up a little bit more. When the men in black first came inside our house, they sat my mom and her two girlfriends down on the couch, and they had a notepad and a pencil, and they looked at the three girls. The first thing that came out of their mouths, and they said, "Can you draw three different kinds of extraterrestrials?" And they sat the notepad down from the girls. My mom's two friends started laughing, cracking up. My mom stayed silent. At that point, it was like, so they went ahead. But my mom drew three different kinds of extraterrestrials. She drew one that she called, the Nordics.
Mm-hmm.
The other ones, she called them the tall whites. They are, tall gray extraterrestrials with very light skin.
Yep.
And I believe those are the culprits that were in the elongated triangular craft.
Yes,
and
they do have triangle crafts. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, Kili Tokor, all that. And she also saw the little Zetas. She called them Zetas. Out of all the different, she had her own little pet names for these beings. She didn't talk about star systems or anything like that, but she called the Zetas. That was, as a little kid, it was, oh, those Zetas, it was a very common thing to us. And
but people didn't know those names like back then, in 1990.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My mom called, if they were white and had blonde hair and they were tall, she called them Nordics.
Yeah.
If they were reptilian in nature, snakes or reptilians, things like that. And the blues, my mom talked about the blues too. One she called blues. I believe she drew them too. And the blues were these beings. She said they kind of look like gray extraterrestrials, but they got this like blue light coming off of their skin, which is really, true to the Arcturian species and things like that.
Yeah.
And she was in contact with them. And the tall whites, along with the Zeta Reticuli, all right, the little Zetas, they were doing a lot of experimentation and things like this on my mom, which, during this time of this whole crash, not only was that the moment where my mom realized this phenomena was happening to her, but it also brought up things that she remembered from being a child. My mom would wake up with strange scars on her, strange marks, started her menstrual cycle at 9 years old. Right during that time is when they started doing these experiments with her. But she even had encounters going back to, as she said, since she was a baby. So it was a lifelong, I guess, situation. And I think due to what the tall whites and the Zeta Reticuli were doing to my mother, I think that's why these Nordics and the ones she called the blues, Arcturians, and a few other species as well. And in her dreams, I know this is kind of like, but she felt like she was protecting the snakes from the mongooses. Mongooses meaning, the grays, and the snakes, the reptilians. So I'm not sure if they were like draconians, although I know draconians and other reptilians, some of them don't get along with certain gray.
Right.
extraterrestrials. They look at them as like parasites,
I know
reptilians are proud.
they normally don't get along, but for like their purpose or their intention of planet Earth, they've made agreements, like kind of sort of an alliance.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. It sounds like, in short, simple terms, that your mom was part of genetic experiments with these extraterrestrials. And I know that the Kili Tokert, or the Tall Whites, they were involved in Area 51 and 3-letter agencies too. So that's super interesting. But it sounds like too, she felt good about the Nordic aliens and what she called the blues. She got
Mm-hmm.
positive feelings from them. So they must have been
Absolutely.
her in some way. Yeah.
Yeah, she said, they would always like provide just wisdom and knowledge, and everything's gonna be okay. She said it was the most calming, peaceful, tranquility, that would just come over. And she also, it's important to say, even in this program, she was with the Tall Whites, the Kili Tokert, with the Zeta Reticuli, Mantis as well, Akara. They're on both sides. Everyone's seizing them. But, even with those experiences, she says she was never scared. Did she feel uneasy and violated and sad? Yes, very sad, especially because of the kind of experimentation they were doing on my mother. And I truly believe that these other ones got involved because there was something about my mother that made her valuable to these reptilians, made her valuable to these Tall Whites, Kili Tokert, to the Zeta,
Yeah.
and important enough for the Nordics and the Blues, the Arcturians, and other species to also take interest in what was going on. So I think she was kind of in a tug of war, unfortunately. And it was 1991, whole nother ball game, and it really tore her up. I learned at a young age not to talk about these things, but these beings, what they were doing, which I know you were probably going to ask, the Tall Whites, the Kili Tokert, they would abduct my mother. They would use the Greys, and the Men in Black told my mom this in my third question, which is all in the documentary. The third question my mom asked the Men in Black is, when these things are taking me, what would happen if something happened to my elderly grandfather at the time she took care of, and my baby, me, and I'm not here to do anything? And the Men in Black said they use small Greys that stay behind. And if anything was to happen to your baby or to your grandfather, they would have you back. And the Men in Black snapped their fingers like they learned a new magic trick, because they're not human. They're so weird. But with that being said, these little Greys would kind of be in the process of getting her ready, prepping her, and all of this. A lot of times, these Kili Tokert, these Tall Whites, would always kind of be standing in the background, no matter what the situation was. They were always like kind of observing. And for the most part, it would be your typical small little Greys that were doing the prep work, getting my mom from her room to the ship, getting her strapped down, all that, getting her on the table. But what they were doing, they would abduct my mom. My mother described it as some sort of like tube thing, almost like a turkey baster, but it wasn't that. It was metallic something or another. And they would actually go to her stomach. It wasn't through her woman parts or anything like that. It was through her stomach, and they would extract embryo. An egg embryo. They would manipulate it or whatever. And that point in time, my mom would be back. They would abduct my mother again. They would reinsert the egg or embryo that they've manipulated. They would send my mom back, abduct her again at a later point, maybe 3 weeks afterwards, and they would extract the slightly grown embryo, fetus, whatever it was, and they would grow them out. And during this time period, and this is what made it so hard for my mom and so sad, in a very short time period, because these beings they're creating grow really, really fast, really quick. So over these abductions and experiences, as they continued this, she started to see her hybrid children. And as time went on, there was a good collection of them, that, quite a few of them, 5 to 6 at least at one time. And her one experience I remember hearing from her was, she would wake up on this table on their ship, and she saw this is her words, her babies, her children, standing off to the side of the room, like standing in the corner, all in like a straight line side by side. Behind them would be one of these tall whites, like almost observing the interaction between her children and my mother.
Yeah.
And my mom described some of them looking very, very human. Some look very deformed, like Sloth from the Goonies is a good, that's what she described it as. And the others looked very gray extraterrestrial with slight human genetics. They look way more gray, and one or two might be like that perfect mix of gray and human, about 50-50. But she would see these, and she would be telling, the taller ones, please, can I have my children? Can I have my children? And they said they can't survive on Earth. And she's like, please. And she was communicating with these, her children telepathically. It was all happening telepathically, that this love, this emotion, that motherly instinct of they need me, that whole situation. And it really tore my mom apart. It really did. And she always talked about, missing her babies and things like that. But this was probably, out of all of her experiences, for the most part, that was the one that happened the most. And it was the most traumatic,
most painful. Yeah.
Most painful and sad. She wasn't afraid. She was heartbroken. I mean, she would cry about her children all the time. She also had a lot of insane health issues as well. And, she had a few miscarriages as well. And the one I saw, and she had her tubes tied. She got her tubes tied, hoping that it would stop all that. And it didn't. It's because the way they're, and even after that, she suffered. She was always bleeding her whole life, 3 weeks out of every month, her whole entire life. A lot of her lung collapsed at 25 years old. I believe that's from going from Earth to their craft, Earth to the craft.
Yeah.
She really suffered, and she didn't have anyone to talk to. We lived in a very country, backwoods, religious kind of town, and she finally found a solution to stop these abductions from happening, and it was drinking alcohol, putting poison in the bloodstream. Then they can't use the embryos, and unfortunately that led to a lot of different things. And that's why I'm trying to do what I'm doing now, to help people like my mother, who passed away 2 years ago on March 9th. So March 9th was the 2-year anniversary. And unfortunately, we never had the evidence or proof until 2 months after she passed away in June, when the Pentagon released the UFO footage. That's the exact week I found my family's crash case and all that. So I've just been at it ever since, to kind of finally give my mother some justice and to help other women out there, because this is happening to so many women out there. And I'm just trying to help them so they don't resort to the things my mom had to, because I knew if she had the community, like the communities we have now back then, it would have been a different situation. But due to ridicule,
like more
it gets shut down.
I think one thing that I've like noticed maybe in like my experience in the UFO community is this like that this stuff is real. You know, it's so far separated from most people's reality, but this stuff is real and it really happens. And when you encounter those types of beings like the grays and reptilians, they're scary as fuck. They are super like intimidating, and the emotional aspect of being abused like that and then actually having children that you can't see, it's very tough. So thank you for telling her story. And her name's Beth Ann White, is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And, she was in contact with a lot of positive beings, that were helping her. And I think they were actually trying to heal her. She did have a lot of issues, but I think if it wasn't for the ones that were helping, she probably would have been done a lot earlier.
Yeah. It sounds like she was looked after, but they like we've been at a war for a very long time. So it's like you have the good ones taking people and then, or the bad ones taking people, and then the good ones trying to rescue them. It's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing for a very long time. And it sounds like this was in the 90s. So it was still very much like active, the experimentation and stuff like that. So,
mm-hmm.
But
Absolutely.
That you have a whole documentary on your channel that people can watch, and all the documentation. One last thing before we move on, the Men in Black. I find those we can call them beings kind of fascinating, but they're kind of like, my understanding is they're kind of like cyborgs, and they're connected to, of course, the government 3-letter agencies, things like this. But they were created by reptilians use them. And so did your mom, like, when they entered the room, was there a shift in energy, or did you get a feeling from them, or like no feeling at all?
When they entered the room, as I said, my family was under the complete impression that these were government officials to just see what happened to whatever this aircraft was. That was it. That was our family's mindset. And like I said, the first thing they did, they went into the living room. The Air Force gentleman was standing on the side. Men in Black pulled out the notepad and the pencil. And I must say, the way they were holding and looking at the pencil, it was like they don't understand what it is or how it works. They are Borgs. They look human. But looking at them, you can't tell. Even if you were to touch them, you can't tell. Yeah. But some of the things they do just isn't really human like. It's strange behavior, and 3-letter agencies use this in tactics and interrogations as well. Sometimes doing something to make whoever you're questioning feel uncomfortable. Right. But it was something a little bit more with that. And like I said, they already knew whatever was in that craft, which the Killytail Court, the tall whites working with our government. It's as clear as day in this story. And that's another reason I think that's who it was, because how did they get there so quick? And they were very strange. And when my mom asked the Men in Black 3 questions, and my mom drew down the extraterrestrials as well. They did a brief regression. And during the regression, the Men in Black were just standing off to the side as the Air Force guy, just calmly walked my mom 5-minute regression, very brief. And unfortunately, that gave a lot of ammunition to the Men in Black, along with my mother's drawings. It's almost like they already knew who my mother was, and that's the only reason they came to our house. Not once, and this is another sign, not once throughout the entire interaction over a 40-minute, time span that they were there, did they ask any questions relevant to the crash. They never asked my mom, what did you see? They never asked, what do you think it was? It was nothing. It was all about my mom. Yeah. And so my mom asked 3 questions, 3 simple questions. Men in Black said, do you have any questions before we head out? Yeah, I do. My mom's first question was, are these things dangerous? The men in black said, if they were dangerous, do you think we would still be here? Which very blunt, straight, right to the point. And it's one of those answers where, okay, yeah. Second question, why don't people know about these things? And this is really important. They said, we are doing everything that we can by preconditioning. And within the next 10 years, you will see signs of extraterrestrials and UFOs in all sorts of media. All right. And then think about when Men in Black came out. My mom and I were watching Will Smith Men in Black, and we were laughing the whole time because literally the real Men in Black told us they would be doing that. Also, this happened in 1991. This is important. And they said 10 years. We were under the impression that disclosure would happen in 2001. We can't talk about it on here, but we know what happened in 2001. A big old distraction, just like 2021. Mm-hmm. You see what's going on. It's every 10 years.
Yeah.
It's all planned.
I've never said this. I actually refuse to put the thing about 2001 in my book, but it was directly connected to who the Keely Tokert work with, who the Men in Black work with, and the reptilians, the Sakaar Empire. It was them. So, okay. So I wanted to ask you too, because that story is on your YouTube channel, but I also wanted to ask you about your adult experiences. Have you ever had experiences with ETs or spiritual beings, or how did your awakening happen as an adult?
Great question. So, it all went back to this situation. I was 4 years old. I had a lot of nightmares after the crash. The movie Aliens was really popular, and they had a bunch of toys that would come with comics. And my mom and my family took away all of the comics because I was 4 years old and I was just starting to understand reality. And I found out that these things are real, and I know they're real. And then I would watch movies and TV, depicting these things. And luckily my mom would explain and my grandfather would explain to me, the difference, but I was still having a lot of nightmares. And one of the nightmares that I only have about 3 reoccurring dreams throughout my life, and I don't remember any other dreams. I've never had dreams of extraterrestrials or anything like that, which is strange in itself. But at that time, I kept having this dream where the same creek in the area, we have a curve right there where this thing crashed. And I've had this dream over and over where I'm in the back seat of a car or in the car. As I got older, I was driving the car. When I was young, I was in the back seat of the car. And this reoccurring dream where it goes off and it goes into that creek, and it, I drowned. I sink to the bottom. It's haunting me. And a big part of me thinks whatever went down with that craft, I was the youngest soul in that area. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if they did an impression. I don't think they, possessed me or anything like that. But I definitely think some of the residue and energy kind of leaked off onto me.
Yeah.
And I've had a couple other strange dreams as well that are reoccurring. But, so my whole life, I was very aware of these things. And as I got older, my mother would tell me things differently. When I was a child, she said, baby, extraterrestrials exist, and mm-hmm. she was very calm. She never scared me. She says, you have nothing to worry about. You're fine. Always very protective and explaining things to me. Yeah. And so as time went on, when I was around 7 years old, I remember being at a party. My mom's near the fire, maybe 6 to 8 people, family, friends, people we know. And we're all sitting around the fire. Everyone was drinking, and someone brought up a movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind or something like that. And my mom said, oh, well, I had a UFO crash behind my house. And everyone kind of what? And my mom continue to tell the whole story, including her interactions with these beings. And at this moment, that entire circle of people, and I was right next to my mom. So when they were all laughing at her, it felt like they were laughing at me. And I was 7 years old, and I knew my mom was telling the truth. But I was just so caught up in the fear and the ridicule that, like, I just couldn't say anything, because what is my voice to, eight grown adults, that
Yeah.
are all liquored up and stuff. And my mom started crying and she just walked off and left. And it was that exact moment I learned I need to keep my mouth shut about this.
Yeah.
Never need to talk about it again. I went on, I became a pastor. I went to Bible college, got ordained. I was a youth pastor, all this wild stuff. I was in a professional metal band, toured all around the country, playing shows, all that wild stuff, CD in stores.
Wow.
After that, I ended up in the Middle East teaching English. I lived over there for 2 years, and wild stuff. But the biggest encounter, I mean, I've seen UFOs and stuff my whole life, because at such a young age, I was aware they were there. I've
Right.
always been looking for them, Yeah, so I've always seen them. Nothing fancy with that. Seen tons and still seeing them, but now I get to record them on my phone. It's awesome. But the biggest experience I had was at a time where, I was going through, that shift, and I had a really, tough year and all this. But my big experience, like physical wide awake experience, was with this light being that really changed everything. This was back 2012.
Hmm.
And here's the kicker: happened on April 21st,
Get out.
which is the date of my UFO crash, 21 years to the date. Now, here's the thing: at that time, until I found the articles, I didn't know the exact date of the UFO crash,
Mhm.
just knew the year. We did not know. My family actually thought it was in October or November.
Wow.
Turns out it was in April. So we just, certain things, everything was so chaotic. You remember the situation, and that's all you remember. And the little details kind of get drowned out because you were so enticed by what you saw. You forget what day it is. So, yeah, ironically, this encounter happened. I was actually living in Delaware in a small apartment. We lived near a road, so we had blacked out curtains, so no light would get inside of our house. Important to say. I was a very small apartment. I was in the living room, and we had a little hallway, and you would go into a big bedroom, and there was a big closet. And my ex at the time, she was in this huge walk-in closet all the way in the back of the apartment, in a separate room, in a separate walk-in closet. I was out in the living room playing with our cat, and very small living room, maybe 6 foot, 8 foot wide, about in the middle. My TV was about probably 4 feet in front of me, bending over, playing with my cat. And right in front of me, maybe 2, 3 feet in front of me, this, 2 foot orb about like this size, blue, unlike anything I've ever seen before. Inside of it, I described it, it looked like electric spaghetti water. Like,
Mhm.
imagine if water kind of looked like spaghetti and it was electricity inside. It was like that, and kind of like moving. It was very strange. It was only there, and I was, during the experience, I was just trying to process what I was seeing. I
Mhm.
I, I didn't even I wasn't afraid. I wasn't excited. I was just trying to process what the heck I'm seeing. And it only lasted for Mississippi. All right, 4 long seconds that felt like an eternity.
Yeah.
And it just hovered there. And right around 4 seconds, it sucked itself into itself. And when it did that, it made a flash. But I remember the light because it blinded me, and the light was flat. I've never seen a flash be a flat
I know.
flash. all light flashes are circular, and it's not a perfect, unless you have a flashlight with a filter on it. But it was this like, it almost like a cut. And when that happened, I had this awful pain, like a sinus, like almost like my sinus right there in forehead.
Yeah.
Awful pain, excruciating. It really, really hurt. And after that, all simultaneously, I started having so much stuff come to me. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ancestry, my ancestors, started people I had no idea I was related to. Not a clue. I didn't know much about my ancestry. But after spending years on doing it and finding that it was accurate, these people that were contact, I didn't believe it. I thought I was losing my mind. I didn't understand what was going on. And I didn't have anyone to talk to. That's the reason my ex eventually became my ex. She tried to convince my grandmother that I need to go to a psychiatrist and stuff, and she saw the flash too. She saw the flash and it scared her. And I was the pastor at a time, very religious, and I was really diving in very deep. And I saw this thing, and it gave me all this information. It also gave me a mathematical equation and a prototype for a craft or energy reactor using an atom of light, and it's pretty large. The prototype, and I still have the original papers. I don't show them publicly. I was told not to. The math equation, it's for harnessing an atom of light. And if certain people knew how to do that, it can be catastrophic if it's not used for energy purposes. So, but I have this thing. It's slightly larger than the Great Pyramid. It's 777 feet tall. It is almost like a pyramid, but you can use it as a craft or energy reactor. And along with that, a lot of other information. At that time, right after the ball of light, I called my mother because, after this download, which the explain downloads out there, Megan, so people understand a little better. When we receive these downloads, it's not like we obtain it all during the download. They literally will give you 1 million files, and every minute, every hour, every year, every month, little pieces of that download come to us like this vision. And when I say vision, the same way if I told everyone that's watching, hey, can you close your eyes and remember your favorite park as a kid? Can you close your eyes, remember your favorite birthday party, wherever it was? And oh, I see it. That's what we are seeing. That's how it comes, And all of that was coming to me, and I was seeing these things. And that's when I called my mom saying, hey, this happened. I'm hearing these things, and these things are telling me stuff about our situation. And, my mom confirmed to me, she said, I've been waiting for you to get old enough. She was always trying to protect me, which her way of protecting me was not telling me anything.
Yeah.
Even up till like, there was times my mom would be in the hospital, and my whole family would know, but no one would tell me because she didn't want me to be affected or upset or anything like that. So
one
she
thing I
filled me
wanted,
in.
oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was gonna just mention quickly, like the download. So I've had something like that happen to me, so I know what you're talking about. When it enters the room, it's almost like time stands still. So it's like, it's weird, but it's because it's from a different place. It's not from this. It almost looks like when you look at it, it doesn't look like it's in this reality. It's a weird phenomenon to describe. But when you receive a download, it's too much information from a higher density for our little brains to understand all in that moment. So it's almost like a burst of energy, and then the puzzle pieces come together at a later date. And another thing I found really interesting, so the 21st, April 21st, and then 21 years later, this happened again on the 21st. Did you realize it was 21 years?
777, also the same height of the prototype.
And I was born on the 21st.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it's a
and I
powerful number.
it is. And so I'm wondering, do you feel like maybe you were like a scientist in a past life, or have some sort of like, maybe you have an experience from a different planet in a past life that would have like, do you feel like they chose you for a reason for this information, or how do you feel? Have you ever figured out why maybe they gave it to you, or you haven't figured it out yet?
Great question. That's something I've always been trying to figure out during the time of this. Why me? Why me? They would show me things, but it was just irrelevant, you know. And I've definitely been in contact with certain things, and I have these intuitions and these feelings with certain places. For example, Orion. When
Mhm.
I go outside and I look at Orion, I just shout it out loud. I said, it's not that far. Like, I just want to go back. Like, I just want to go home. And regardless of what's going on there now, I want to kick them out and I want to go back home. You
Yeah.
know, it's as simple as that. But I've had a lot of people do like readings and, you know, say things, and almost everyone has suggested, you know, you were this or you were that, but I really just try to stay focused on, you know, what my mission is. I feel as if I was to remember all of that, I might get distracted of the whole reason I'm here to begin with.
Yeah.
So I do meditate on it a lot, and there's a lot of different kinds of beings that I'm kind of, you know, vibing with, I guess we could say.
Yeah.
And I just try to keep focus on that. But I'm not sure why. And a big part of it is I not quite sure why I was made or what's the purpose for, you know. And
Right.
so I just try to focus on opening that door, the door that, you know, once it's open, no one under the earth, on the earth, or above the earth will ever be able to shut it again.
Right.
And that's disclosure. And regardless of what beings I'm in contact with or what I think I've done in a past life, and for the most part, these downloads and things I've been remembering are earthly lines,
Right.
like ancestors, things like that. I'm really in tune. It's a lot easier for me to remote view my ancestors
Hmm.
than it is. It's like I have something that's cutting me off from the universal one,
Right.
but it is there. And every now and then they send a download or something to me or communicate with me or fly around for me, you know. But
Yeah.
that experience with that ball of light, being a pastor and everything, I had doubts, you know,
Yeah.
every now and then. Even though I said I believed in God and I believe that there's more and I believe in ghosts, I believe in aliens, and even after seeing a UFO crash and all that, when I saw that light being, that was the first time in my life I can say 110%, like you said, it's another dimension or something we're looking at. It's the first time, like, there is something actually, there's more. There's
Yeah.
actually more happening around us. That was my
Yeah.
first confirmation where I'm like, holy crap, everything I've said I believed in
Is
is
there?
actually real. And, you know, it sounds silly, it sounds hypocritical, but like you said, people really can't understand how it is to see these things. It's a life-changing experience. And after
How,
all of that, after I saw the ball of light, that's how I ended up in the Middle East. And a lot of stuff, you know, went down there. So
how did it make you feel, like the ball of light? Did you feel anything or nothing?
confusion.
Yeah.
I It was only 4 seconds. I didn't have time to think afterwards. It's I There hasn't been a day since 2012, April 21st. There hasn't been a day that hasn't went by where I beg this thing to see it again. And I think about it because it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And that download it gave to me helped me so much. At first, it was a little overwhelming, almost too much to take. And now I fully understand why they give it to us in little bits at a time. And the
Yeah.
truth was, I hate to admit this, I wasn't ready. And that is one feeling I got during seeing this thing in the brief time, was other than trying to process it, my mind, I understand science, gamma rays, things like that.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't process how this thing could exist and what was the energy source.
Oh my God, I know.
What is that beautiful source I'm looking at? And
Yeah.
the second feeling I had is that it shouldn't have been there.
Mhm.
Like I just got this overwhelming feeling because of the sense of urgency of it only being there for 4 seconds. I just got this sense of like it has to get in and it has to get out, almost like by whatever it did to me, it was doing something that, possibly something else didn't, wanted me to wait to get to that point. And it's like this thing jump started me even when I wasn't ready. And I just had this feeling like it was doing something to help me, but it could get in trouble if something else found out about it. And that's the only way I can describe it.
Wow. Yeah, because I had something similar. I don't know how many years ago, but I was basically sleeping and then I felt like something turned the light on in my room. So I rolled over and it was this gigantic, gigantic glowing white orb. And it was emitting unconditional love. Like this thing loved me. So immediately, like I was put at ease, but I couldn't believe it was just floating there. It looked so strange. And eventually we had this like telepathic interaction, like a download, and I wasn't afraid at all. It was just emitting pure love. And I had my big screen TV over above my dresser and it floated into the TV and made a zap like this and just disappeared. But it was very similar.
Something interesting in my story, Megan, like I said, the TV was right behind it. And
Mm,
this thing was about 2 feet in front of the TV. I was bending over playing with my cat with a toy, and it was right in front of me. The TV was in the area. Now it didn't go back into the TV, but there was a TV there, which is interesting. Don't know if that has anything to do with it, but
yeah.
probably because you had a TV in your bedroom and I had a TV in the living room. So if that would have happened anywhere else, but yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And I felt that too. And just seeing something so beautiful, like I literally worship the light. I worship the source energy, whatever made that being, whatever that energy is,
Yeah.
especially with the pain, it was trying to help me. And the pain it gave to me, there's not a doubt in my mind that one of these beings could level a city if they wanted to. And they have in our history,
Yeah.
and they are very, very powerful and just out of awe and just it's beyond anything I could imagine. So when I saw it, it was just like that feeling of it's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
And just that feeling really brings you at peace, calm. And like I said, it was so fast. It was only like 4 Mississippi, which
Yeah.
it felt much longer because I was trying to think of so many things at once. And that really changed me and put me on the path. And unfortunately, for years, I never had any evidence, as I said. And it was, June 2020 or 2019, I forget when. But that's when I found the evidence. And that's also, ironically, the same time the Pentagon Navy released the UFO footage. And I always made a promise to myself that if I ever found evidence, I would share it from the highest mountain, because I have shared it with a lot of people I loved and cared about. And a lot of them thought I was crazy, even though they wouldn't say it, they would show it. Some of them did. And it always drove me crazy to have an experience like this and not be able to prove it. So
Yeah.
when I found these articles, I said, I'm not going to stop until I do this. And that's what really got me into what I'm doing now.
Awesome. Yeah, I kind of feel like sharing experiences like that, like the light beings, gives people hope. Because a lot of times I get emails, is everything going to be okay in the world? People are really worried. But because of my encounters with good ETs and spiritual energies like that, I kind of just like, I'm good. So
Yeah.
I feel like sharing that is a service to others. And you've done a great job on your channel. What I like about your channel is not giving everyone a chance to share their story, whether they're well known or not. And so can you tell people a little bit about do you have a message, an ending message for people about disclosure?
Yeah, absolutely. So, after having a UFO crash behind my house when I was 4 years old, my mother's, a contactee being abducted, got brothers and sisters that are extraterrestrials, but I can't see them because humanity ain't ready for it. Why should I suffer? But with all that being said, it's, been a driving force, especially finding this information 2 months after my mother passed away has really, really struck a nerve with me, and it's really saddened me. And I'm transmuting that pain, and I'm putting it into something positive to make sure no one has to go through what my family went through. And I know how hard it is as an experiencer and being involved with this. And what I've been doing with We Are the Disclosure, as you said, that's the name of the series on my YouTube channel. We are interviewing people and just letting them share their experience. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do for someone is just listen. Listening is such a powerful tool. And by doing this, we have some people that are well known. We have others that no one's ever heard of before. But ironically, we have 10 episodes now, and they all go together. And we're starting to understand the bigger picture because we all have a piece of the puzzle. And
Yeah.
as we share our experience, we get to put that together and understand a bigger picture. There's been a lot of coincidence, which don't exist. That's a silly word to begin with. But in our stories of these dumb little small details that no one thinks about and no one normally asks people to find out these details,
Right.
and just seeing them line up with other people that don't know each other is absolutely incredible. It's really helping us paint a better picture of this phenomena. And one thing I have learned is this phenomena is very layered, very complex, and there's two narratives and two sides to everything. And when you study it as a whole, it's just, the serpent eating its own tail, the Ouroboros, and not just on this planet, the universe. It's just, the whole universe spins, and it's been doing the same thing for a very long time, just different layers, different narratives. But this has been going on for such a long time. And it's been a privilege to help people get out there, share their story. I'm not interrogating them. I'm asking about their emotions. Our questions are really unique. How does this make people feel? What are the physical side effects that women have to go through? A lot of men don't like talking about these periods and uterus and scarring and hemorrhaging and all this stuff. But I'm making the point, along with my co-host, to get out there and address these issues because it's happening. It's real, just as real as you and I. And if more people don't speak, that experience never happened.
Right. It's so true.
That's why it's so important. And that's why we're not waiting for the clowns in Washington to tell us when disclosure is. We are not waiting for disclosure.
Yeah.
We are the disclosure. That's what's going on. We are the experiencers, you, everyone else, all my guests, myself. That's what's going on. So please come check out the YouTube. Make sure you do that. And there's a lot of links as well that will probably be provided. And you can see all that stuff, other socials and other episodes. Absolutely amazing. And it's an honor helping people get out there, because when they come on the show, they share. Other people can relate or have additional information. Then they get in contact with one another. They become friends. They have a buddy system. And hopefully they don't have to drink themselves to death like my mother did. You know, my mom passed at 51 years old, you know, extremely young. She had me extremely young, and it's sad. I want to make sure everyone has someone to talk to out there. It's important.
Yeah, I'm totally on board with your message, because my intention behind sharing my experiences was also to help other people in writing my book for the children who are taken, who never come back home, or are sold into slavery, the secret space programs. And to be abused like that when you're a little child is super traumatic. But if you can take an experience like that and transform it to help other people, then, and especially a movement like this, I love how you call your show We Are the Disclosure, then it kind of doesn't make it okay, but it makes it it transforms it to be in service. And so I'm in on that. So what's the name of your YouTube channel, and are there any other ways people can contact you?
Yes, my YouTube channel is Robert Earl White, Order of Light. If you type in Robert Earl White, I should pop up there. And on the YouTube page at the top will be the newest episodes. And when you scroll down, you will see my UFO crash playlist. I did 3 parts. I have some additional interviews talking about my mother, talking about the experience as well. And that's all there. You can find all the videos and playlists on there. Also, I have my direct me link, which will give you all my other socials. I have tons of accounts on TikTok and a bunch of other things as well. And I've been using it all. Also, in that, you can find the Order of Light merch store. We got cool merchandise, stuff like that. And also, you can find the UFO crash documents, the 6 pages of articles and hard evidence of my family's case that you can read for yourself. And it's all there in the direct me link. And my YouTube is Robert Earl White, Order of Light. And it's great. New episodes. We try to get them out every week at Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern time. And we have a great live chat, great community. A lot of your subscribers have already been hanging out, coming on over. Megan sent me, hello, welcome. So awesome. Big thanks to all of subscribers and followers. I appreciate all of your love. Thank you.
Well, thanks for coming on, and definitely check out his YouTube channel. And I'd love to do this again with you. And We Are the Disclosure. So we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in.